The nice thing is that when stuff catches on fire, it doesn't tend to catch on fire again if it all burns off the stuff that was burning.
Today we're working on our Oliver 1855. It's our main irrigation tractor. We use it for all different types of things around the farm, moving things around, hauling like the irrigation equipment, like I said. It's probably one of our most used tractors. It just needs a little bit of TLC. We're gonna do some oil filters, fuel filters, make sure all the fluids are good, put down some grip tape on the floor just to make it a little safer, but we're gonna see how it goes. Like I said before, it's a 1972 Oliver 1855. It's our main workhorse on the farm. We use it for irrigation, for moving stuff around. Every once in a while, if we have issues with weeds, we'll throw a cultivator on it and run it through our sweet corn. It was our original tractor here, first tractor that we used. Before we had all the fancy equipment and auto steer tractors that we have today, this was actually pulling our sweet corn planter. We had a 2020 fully recording monitor inside the cab of the tractor, all this fancy modern day technology in an old 1972 tractor. It was a pretty wicked setup. I'll have to show you guys that some other time, but we're gonna get to it, replacing all that stuff on this guy now. These are the filters here that we're gonna be replacing today. Here's our part number for our oil filter, as well as our 2 fuel filters, which are the same. Now you may be looking at this and thinking that it looks a little different than your standard oil filter you'd put on your car. Well, that's because it doesn't have a spin-on style oil filter. It has the canister type, which means that this outer shell is part of the tractor. It's a metal shell that has a head right here, and there's a rod that runs all the way and connects to the base, and this guy sits inside there, as well as the fuel filters. Fuel filters are the exact same thing. There's a rod that comes up from the bottom here, screws into the top, and the fuel filter gets squeezed between those 2 parts. We also have a hydraulic filter. So this is for the over-under hydraulic system here. So here's your throttle, and then here's your gears. So you have low, medium, high, as well as your transmission right there. And what this does is it takes the speed from the output shaft of the motor and just shifts gears in between there. So it's actually shifting the input speed to your transmission. Right here is an oil filter for that. I did not have one of these in our oil filter cabinet, and when we rebuilt or overhauled the tractor and did all the painting to it, we just sprayed over these filters, so I don't have part numbers on those. But we have some friends that are Oliver mechanics, and they're gonna help me out with that. We also have over here, we're not gonna be doing any of the hydraulic oil filters or the differential fluid changes because I just had to do those. You can see this is where your hydraulic filter would normally be. We got our hydraulic pump rebuilt because we were having some power steering issues, and I went through that. So when I did that project, I didn't have a camera or anything to record that on. So that's all done. This tractor also got that little filter replaced down there as well, which is another one we're not going to be doing today. And I just replaced all of these hydraulic lines, went to our local shop that replaces hydraulic lines, or I should say builds hydraulic lines for us, makes them, and all these lines just got replaced. So everything should be good and leak free on it. I slide under here and remove the old oil plug, which is a 1 1/8 inch plug. I'm gonna see if we can catch all this stuff in here. I don't think this motor takes more than 5 gallons. It looks like a fairly small oil pan. So hopefully that'll do with all of it. The tractor is actually locked into the shed right now. We have a truck that's behind me that we're working on that we have the transmission and differential out of. And I don't really want to move it. So that's locking this tractor in. So unfortunately, I don't want to run it for an extended amount of time inside the shed. It's going to fog everything out. We're doing painting in here. I would normally want to run this tractor a little bit before I drain the oil. The reason being, that's going to stir up everything in the oil pan. It's going to heat up the oil, make it come out faster, do a little bit better of a job. I would normally want to do that. Because this tractor does not get run super hard and it gets babied a little bit. Don't get me wrong, it's still used every day, but we do baby it a little bit more than the other ones. So we are gonna just run with it right now. It's cold oil. It's 55 to 60 degrees in here. It should be fine. It's not like it's gonna be sludge or anything like that. So we've got the oil draining out in the bottom there. It's still kind of in a slow stream. I like to wait till it's dripping. That lets me know that most of it is out. We're gonna move on to the oil filter now. So there's a 5/8 bolt up at the top, or I should say head. You remove that guy. There are drain plugs at the bottom. I don't use them. I don't know why. I just don't ever, or at least I have never done it. So I'm going to remove that bolt, make sure that there's a decent amount of slack there. Give it a little bit of a tap. Ooh, that's gross. There's a lot of nasty stuff in here. That's no good, guys. There's a lot of material in here and I'm not quite sure what it is. But you know, at least it did its job. I'm gonna have to look into this a little bit more and see what's going on, but there's definite metal shavings in here. So I put it between here and I try to dry them off the best I can. And when I look at them, it's almost like gravel. And so I was thinking maybe sand got in there, but then I crush it between my fingers and I'm starting to realize that I believe it's carbon buildup. I can crush it in my fingernail and they crunch and they're kind of that soft, crunchy feel. So if all those little pieces are just carbon, I'm not gonna worry about it too much. There were some metal pieces in the oil filter, but they looked like little pigtails. And those little pigtails aren't worrying me too much because I believe that that was coming from threading the bolt in or possibly the metal housing on the outside of the oil filter. The carbon, I'm not 100% sure where it could have gotten introduced. We put a liner in this motor last year, sleeve in it. So it could have come with something like that. We were removing heads and the heads were carbon packed. This motor does have an injection pump that's turned up a little bit, so it does roll coal a decent amount. So there probably was some carbon buildup in there. Somehow I think that fell down into the motor. When I reached my finger up into the oil pan, I felt a little bit of grip, but nothing bad. A lot of these antique tractors, like some of our older ones, are 1940s tractors. You can feel grit on the bottom. I felt a very little bit of sandiness, but it was that carbon buildup again. So I think that that filter was just doing its job and pulling all that junk out of the oil. So right now I'm not gonna worry about it, and I'm just gonna throw the oil back in it and the new oil filter on. Now with these oil filters, they're a little bit funky. So you have one side on here that has a big opening. It has a big hole in it, and then the other side has a smaller one. The side that has the smaller opening has almost a spongy cork type flat style. That's gonna go down facing your oil pan. You do not wanna flip it around. There is a right and wrong way to put these on. So you're gonna take the side that has that flat ring on the bottom, and that's gonna go down. The cone side's gonna go up. So the cone area, the rounded off edges there, are gonna go inside of the filter. Also, a choice that I made was I'm running a copper O-ring on this rod just to make sure that when I throw it through here, and it's metal on metal there, so I just wanted to make sure that that right there is gonna be a good seal. So I decided to throw a copper washer on there. So hopefully that'll just crush and make it a little bit of a better seal. So these things can sometimes be a pain, but normally they're not too bad. You just gotta work with them a little bit. You see the end of the rod? I should say the bolt's gonna fit down in the threads. You're gonna feel a little bit of resistance, a little bit of springiness. You're gonna push it down and start threading in with your hands. Now you should be able to feel if you're on the right path. You'll feel if your threads start catching, if something starts cross-threading. That's why I always like to start by hand. Now I can feel it's grabbed onto something. I'm gonna keep hand tightening while making sure that this filter housing is lining up with the base, lining up on that O-ring and making really good contact. So I'm just gonna keep tightening until I see that everything appears to be seated well. I can see that there's an equal gap all the way around the filter. Everything feels good. I'm gonna grab my wrench and just start tightening it down. Now I'm gonna tighten until it gets tight. You do have to remember that this housing is a little bit of a thin sheet metal type material, so you don't want to go crazy on it. You want to get it tight so that no oil is going to seep around the filter, but do not go crazy. I have a crush washer, so I'm feeling to the point where it's seated. And I'm gonna go a little bit more, just so I know that that copper crush washer is gonna make a good tight seal. All right, I feel like that's solid. I feel like that's not gonna leak. If for some reason you put it back together and there is a slow little seep or leak, you can always give it another turn or two. I'm gonna move on now to doing our fuel filters here and draining those and making sure everything's set up there. When it comes to fuel filters, you're always gonna wanna start off by making sure that your fuel is off so that when you pull these guys off, you don't get a constant stream of gas or diesel or whatever you're doing. On this Oliver here, it's right above the over-under hydraulic system. It's almost always on tractors, a righty-tighty. That's what shuts off your fuel. Almost always. I mean, out of all the antique tractors that we have, I've yet to experience one that's not that way. But I'm sure there's different ways of doing stuff everywhere. So you're just gonna keep twisting that guy until you feel that it seats, and then you're just gonna give it, after it does that, you're just gonna give it a little bit more of a tighten, just to make sure that it's not leaking. This is also a really good time to check to make sure that you don't have any leaking connections in the bottom of your tank. I've noticed that a lot of our seals in these little petcocks go bad. So I feel that he's nice and tight now. Now, I'm not sure what the technical size is on these guys. What they are is just little 12-point nubs. I normally always screw them off just with the pliers. I don't normally use, oh guys. So this is super duper gunky. Rust almost looking like. Yeah, that's very, very bad. The O-ring in this is shot. Let's smell. The diesel smells good. So at least that's a good sign. I was actually expecting there to be more diesel in these filters than I thought. Or there's less diesel than I thought. We're gonna open up this guy too. This one's a little bit better, which is actually weird. Nope, it is not weird. So the fuel actually comes from the tank through this line and actually feeds through this filter and back. So that explains why this guy is a little bit more dirty than this guy. So the dirty fuel's coming in this side and the clean fuel's coming out this side. Sorry about that, guys. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I took a bunch of the stuff off. The camera was running out of battery, so I had to plug that guy in. And so I'll catch you up here on what I did. So I removed the fuel filter. As soon as I did that, I noticed that there was definitely a lot of junk on the bottom of this thing. This is kind of your little water separator, and there was a lot of, I'm not even sure, just junk, just general junk that you'd find in an oil filter. I have not yet to remove the second one yet. I kind of foreshadowed earlier that when you shut off the fuel, it gives you an idea if that petcock works or not. Two things I noticed. As soon as I shut that petcock in there started to be a drip of oil. Let me give you a look of what that petcock looks like, if we can get on it. So you probably can't see that super well. It just looks like a little T-handle basically that's back there. Let's see if I can get this camera set up for you guys. It's a little T-handle back there, and that's what you screw closed, and there's just a little bit of drip of oil, or not oil, diesel coming out of it. So clearly there is an issue. This was also this is the inlet right here. This was dripping diesel even though that was shut off, which means that that valve's not working. So I just stuck a screw up there with some Teflon tape just to hold it for now. We're gonna remove the second one here and see what this guy looks like. So there's screw offs. You can see right here that the threads are on the bottom part of the filter. We got a little bit of diesel coming out here. See what this guy looks like. Keep that over the top. So I did dump out some of the diesel in the bottom, but you can see this one's clean. It's an interesting system because these two filters are actually identical. and they're just in line. So the fuel comes from the tank, it goes to the pump up front, your little hand prime pump, and then that goes into the first filter, which is this guy, and then goes into the second filter, which is this guy. And they both have water filters, and they're both the exact same part number. So at least you're gonna have some clean diesel. What we got in each of these kits is you open these kits up, and these kits come with a filter. They come with 3 of these O-rings, these bigger style O-rings. They come with a smaller O-ring that looks something like, if I can find it here, something like this. They come with one of these. I'm not sure if you can see it. It's just a small style O-ring. Come with that. And they also come with this mystery washer. Now this mystery washer here, I have yet to see what it does. I don't find a purpose for it. So, first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna replace the O-ring that's up inside here. Inside this metal housing, there's a little O-ring, which is this guy. That slips right on top of that. After you're done with that, you're going to replace your O-ring up inside here with one of these big O-rings. I've already done that. Now you may be looking at this screw and thinking, wow, that's bare, that's a little funky looking. Why is that like that? Well, when I said earlier that you can have issues with your petcock, which is what shuts the valve up underneath your fuel tank that shuts off your fuel. You can either have an external leak where it leaks outside on the actual tractor, or it just won't seal shut. In my case, it wasn't sealing shut, so I screwed that all the way closed. That's the fuel inlet into the filter, and just kept on dripping. So I covered a screw in Teflon tape, stuck it up there, at least to hold it for now. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna find your base here that goes on the bottom of your filter. So your filter sits on top, something like that. Boom, goes on top of your base. You're gonna wanna make sure to clean this guy really, really well. Just make sure that you wipe all the junk out of the bottom so that there is no gumminess, no junk that's just gonna go right back up into this new filter and plug it up just like the old one. Now there was an O-ring that was in here. And what you wanna do with that O-ring is pull it out. There's one of those big style O-rings, it was sitting in there like that. Now when you get your 3 O-rings, they're all the exact same thickness. They all are the exact same thickness, but there's 2 different sizes. 2 of them are smaller, like this style, and one is slightly bigger. The slightly bigger one goes up inside this housing. Your slightly smaller one, the 2 that are left are the exact same size. Those are gonna go in there. Actually, let me test that theory real quick and make sure they're the exact same size. Yep, they are. So those 2 left, you can install them a couple of different ways. You can take your filter and you can slip it on here. Or you can do what I do most of the time, and I don't normally have issues, and just put it on here. Take your filter and set it on top. So I'm just gonna make sure that everything is really nice and clean, which I can wipe a little bit more. Now it comes with 3 O-rings, 3 big O-rings. The one big one goes up here, and then one of those 2 smaller ones goes on the bottom here. I don't know what the third one's for. I can't figure it out. When I pulled it off, there was no extra O-ring that fell out. I think it was either for a different situation or in case you break one. I don't know. I can't figure it out. You're gonna set your filter up on top of this guy. In my case, I'm gonna pull out my little plug I got in here. This is gonna cause diesel to flow. Not too bad. You're gonna line it all up, and you're just gonna start twisting with the bottom base. Now, when it's not tight, this little plug here moves independent from the bottom base. So you're gonna wanna start with that guy. Now I have a little light. You can check with anything else. We just wanna make sure that that O-ring up top there isn't falling down and everything's seating fine there. I also, cause I'm a little bit more picky, like to set it so that my oil filter numbers are sticking out, just so I know what is actually in them, or at least what's actually on the tractor. You can see the diesel, we had a leak here in the O-ring before, so that was causing the diesel to break down the paint, but it doesn't affect the performance at all. I'm just gonna twist this a little bit. I would say it's similar to an oil filter as far as tightness goes. You don't wanna crank on it, but I'm gonna set that. That's probably about good. It's just a common sense thing. You're gonna feel it when the O-rings seat, and you're gonna feel it when the O-rings start squishing down a little bit. Now inside this kit, I recommend getting a pick or a razor blade or something like that. You have this little guy, which is what comes out of the bottom here. It's what lets your water out when in your water separator. You're gonna take a pick or a razor blade or anything like that, and you're gonna get rid of that old O-ring. They actually make a little indent that's on the side of the screw or the bolt or the drain plug, whatever you want to call it, that I don't believe is designed to make it so that it's easier for the O-ring to get off, but it sure does give a little bit of a easy way to pull them off. So just wipe them down, make sure there's no junk on them. Now the O-ring that goes on these guys, oh geez, let's hope I didn't lose it here. It's somewhere around here, I know it. The sad thing is you guys probably saw me set it down in the video and you know exactly where it is. Alright, well, I'm gonna go look for that quick. So I didn't end up finding that small O-ring in the video. You guys probably know exactly where I set it, but I wasn't able to find it. But what I did find is I have an O-ring set here, so I found the exact same O-ring, or at least whatever's close to it. That small O-ring, or the smallest O-ring in the kit, is gonna slip right over your bolt, and that's just gonna screw right in the bottom here. Make sure that, oh, there's some gunk in there that's causing me to cross thread a little bit. You're gonna just line it up the best you can and send it on up there. I'm having some issues with getting it straight. Come on. There it goes. Make sure you don't cross thread them. They're definitely easy to cross thread because they are not metal. They look like they're nylon or some other type of plastic. Those things really like to cross thread. So just make sure you get them in straight. If they're any bit wonky, take the time. It's not worth cross threading something. I mean, it's not a big deal with the plastic because it's not gonna hurt your actual threads. But that's how you do the fuel filters. I'm gonna clean up a little bit and then we'll fill it full of oil. Started out measuring out 6 quarts of oil in this oil jug. I filled this thing up, and when I pull out and look at the dipstick, we just hit the low marker. So that tells me I'm gonna fill it up with about 2 more quarts of oil, see where we are after that. And then I always like to fill it up all the way to the full range to start, because I know that the motor's not gonna get more full of oil, it'll only get less full. So that's always nice because you make sure that you're still in an operating range. You're not gonna have any issues with that. So I'm gonna finish up this, top it off. We're gonna go around, make sure all the fluids are good, start it up and test drive it. So we got our new oil filter in. We got 2 of our new fuel filter ins. We just finished filling it up with oil. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna make sure that our petcock is open in the back, and we're gonna go about bleeding out the fuel. Or air, I should say. Bleeding fuel in, air out. So what we're gonna wanna do is open this guy up. Open this guy up. I like opening both up just till we see fuel out of one or the other. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna come up front here. You can trace the lines and you can find your pump, and this is your little prime pump. And you see that? That's what we're looking for. Once you see fuel coming out of that guy, you're gonna close them up. Tighten them down a tad, and then do the same thing again. Try not to get shot in the eye. Oh, and there you go. There's your diesel. So walking around the tractor here, making sure all the fluid levels are all right, I noticed that the fluid level in our over-under hydraulic system was really low. So what the over-under hydraulic shift does is it allows you to have 3 gears within each gear set. So if I am in third gear, I can select between third gear low, medium, and high. And that just gives you the adjustability that if you're applying fertilizer or you just need a little bit more torque or a little bit more top speed, you're able to do that. So I pulled this dipstick out and I found no oil on it. And then I went a step further and I shined my pen light down there and I see no oil. So we're going to open that thing up on the bottom and see if anything comes out of it. If not, I don't know really what to say. I know that there is a filter for it and I actually don't have it, which is the bummer because I don't know what the filter number is. But you can see right here is where the oil filter is for that guy. And I don't know the filter number. So we're gonna crack that bottom and see what we've got. And push. Ooh,
The nice thing is that when stuff catches on fire, it doesn't tend to catch on fire again if it all burns off the stuff that was burning. And putting some heat on it, I finally got it to break loose, so we're gonna see if there's actually anything in this here tube. Okay. So the fluid actually doesn't smell burnt, and from what I can see right now, it doesn't appear to actually have any, does not appear to have actually any metal in it. So after finding out that there was no oil in there, I drained all of the rest of the stuff out. It did not look that contaminated, so I threw the plug back on. I came back over here, and that was where our mystery oil filter from the beginning of the day was, that I wasn't 100% sure on what it was. I pulled that oil filter out and I lined it up alongside this one here. Now there are no visible part numbers on this guy. I attempted to scrape off a little bit to see if I could see the numbers underneath it, but I was not able to. But they look identical to this filter here. Looks absolutely identical to this one, which is a filter I did have in the cabinet, and they both are stamped G4 with their inner housings. And that filter is also the same as another fluid filter that we have on this tractor, which is mounted up underneath that wheel. So I'm gonna take this guy right now. I've already oiled up his O-ring. So I'm gonna take this guy, which is part number, whatever that is right there, and we're just gonna throw him right on here. I'm gonna need 2 hands. Work them in here, set them on the threads, exact same as a standard oil filter. Just hand tight. That's all you gotta do for this guy. When you start your tractor back up, it may still act a little funny and take a little while, but it'll blow the rest of that air out now that you got the main source out. So we're just gonna go through now, check all the fluids. I think we should be good to start it up and see how she runs. I just want to say thank you guys all for watching. It means a lot. I'm working here. I'm doing my best I can. I'm not good with the camera at all. I'm not good with talking to the camera at all. So thank you guys for sticking with me. I don't have a lot to make videos on right now, so hopefully in the future, as everything keeps melting down, I can show you some cool stuff, but right now that's all we really have. So thank you guys for watching.